In December of 2019, a formal agreement was signed with an extremely generous donor to provide $3 million to Christ and St. Luke's Church to support physical improvements which are essential to us continuing as a parish and which also make it possible to accommodate a music and arts preschool. This collaboration is essential for us to be able to revitalize our parish hall complex, to serve the functions of the church, and to become a stronger, healthier heart for our community. Christ and St. Luke's is a member of a unique group of parishes that share the joys and the burdens of an historic building complex that has important value to the larger community as well as to the parish itself. Most of these parishes are relatively small in the face of the extraordinary costs of restoring, preserving, and maintaining the heritage. For example, Christ and St. Luke's has 325 pledge units, Calvary Pittsburgh 425, and the American Cathedral in Paris only 250 pledge units. In order to maintain these facilities, it requires funding sources beyond the capacity of the parish itself to do so. Most such parishes look for partnerships with organizations who can share space in the buildings when that space is not being used by the church. This is why First Presbyterian, St. Andrew's, Ghent Methodist, Epworth Methodist, Freemason Street Baptist, and St. James Richmond all rent out space that is not used during the week to operators of preschools. The scale and scope of the work needed at Christ and St. Luke's has made it necessary to put together a very complex patchwork of funding sources in order to save our historic legacy. The first 3 phases of this work was completed in June of 2019. And those 3 phases included repairing the building envelope. In the course of working on the project and on the building, we learned that the condition of the stone due to water penetration was much more severe than we had thought. A key part of the program was the mortar repair, which you see here in the before and after photographs. The scope of the work expanded when new problems were uncovered, and as a result, it used more of our budget than expected, but the building is now sound. The second phase of our work has been the refurbishing of our superb organ. This multi-year effort, brilliantly executed by Foley Baker, has produced the results that we are now enjoying on every Sunday. The third phase of this first group of projects included improvements to the interior, such as repairing the wood flooring, repairing the kneelers, many of which were in extremely bad shape, and repairing several of the stained glass windows. Small changes, such as soundproofing the ramp so that we no longer have thundering herds in the middle of services, and the extension of the chancel level to provide better performance spaces, also were part of this work. The Great West Window, which was just recently completed, looks more glorious than ever. The lighting system has been transformed. On the drawing, you can see that it consists of banks of new lights on the top beams and on the rood screen. The cost of this work was approximately $5 million. It was substantially completed in mid-2019, and we were able to pay all of the bills, including the loan financing. We emerged debt-free. The key to this success is the patchwork quilt of funding. As you can see in the pie charts, 38% was from the general campaign of last year. 20% came from Jane Batten's Challenge Grant. With thanks to the Grandy family, 8% was the principal of the Selden Chapel Endowment, since that fund was meant to be for repairs, and this should eliminate the causes of those maintenance problems. 10% came from bequests, 4% unused income from the endowment, and 19%, or $1 million, from historic tax credits. These first 3 phases of our 2016 master plan included that most urgently needed work to save the buildings. Phases 4 and 5 are the next most critical ones and will be combined into one construction operation. The work in Lloyd Hall and the parish house are so interconnected that it is impossible to separate them into two phases. Phase 6, which is the restoration of the Lychgate Garden, is very much on our minds. We have preliminary plans, and there are members of the parish very interested in raising funds for it. However, the most critical work is in phases 4 and 5 because that work can only be done with a large construction project, all at one time. There have been many previous efforts to build a functioning parish house for Christ of St. Luke's, and that story is a useful introduction to where we are now. In 1908, Christ Church was built without a parish house, just a small office. Then, in 1918, the present parish house was added, but it consisted mostly of a gym for the boys' choir, a choir rehearsal hall, and a series of offices. When Christ Church merged with St. Luke's Church in 1936, it became clear that a parish house was needed to accommodate the expanded educational and social programs. Plans were drawn in 1936, but failed because of a lack of funding. In 1947, a very beautiful complex was designed, but also failed because of a lack of funding. In 1950, a makeshift plan built the very low-budget Lloyd Hall, primarily as a gym, and connected it to both the Guild House and the parish house. Then, in 2000, a plan for replacing Lloyd Hall was developed but superseded by an ambitious plan to build a large building that required the demolition of the Guild House, which at that point was an important part of parish life. That project also failed because of a lack of funding. Then, in 2013, a small-scale effort made cosmetic changes to Lloyd Hall and the parish house to make them more functional and cheerful. That process continued in 2014 until it became clear that a really large-scale effort was needed. For the past 10 years, the parish has been struggling to find adequate space for its expanding programs. The choir, whose vocal cords and respiratory systems are a great asset for the church, is housed in a basement that floods, has layers of unhealthy dust and mold, and is inaccessible for people with mobility problems. Our children's program is on the 3rd floor, which violates most codes for such programs, which call for them being on the ground floor, and presents difficulties for parents and children alike, as well as safety concerns. Unconscionable in this day and age, the upper floor of the parish house is not accessible for persons with mobility problems, and the 1st floor is accessible only through the ramp in the nave of the worship space. And then there are the bathrooms. They do not meet code and are inadequate. The mechanical and electrical systems are a hodgepodge of makeshift improvements, constantly breaking down and in need of repair. For the past 7 years, we've been working to find a solution for this never-before-solved problem. It began with small incremental improvements. When it became clear that there were major fundamental changes that had to be made, we retained Hartman Cox, architects from Washington, D.C., to help us conduct an inclusive process with the parish and find creative solution. That plan is a physical design, but it is also a strategy for organizing the functions of the parish. And it includes the following: abandon the uninhabitable basement of the parish house. Move the choir up to the clean space on the 3rd floor. Move the children's program to the 1st floor where they belong. Use the ground floor of the parish house for programs. Move the offices to the 3rd floor. Provide a single point of entry to the parish house during the week to eliminate a great deal of confusion and security problems. provide an elevator to make all floors accessible, provide a new energy assistant heating, ventilating, and air conditioning system, which will be a geothermal system to save energy and eliminate that museum of mechanical equipment that we currently have next to the Stockley entrance. The plan illustrates the concept for the ground floor. In it, you can see in the upper right a new entry drive, which will provide access for disabled persons and for children, and it will include parking for disabled people. The next item that it includes, indicated in blue, is an infill building to provide the elevator and the bathrooms that will connect to a renovated parish hall and to Lloyd Hall. In the middle of the park area, you can see a play area for children, which will be an amenity for the school and for the church on Sunday. But it also will send a message that this is a child-friendly place. Right now, there are no indications of that on the outside of our building. As we take a closer look at the plan, we can see, first of all, the accessibility ramp and infill building, which are indicated in blue. Together, they provide a single point of entry with a reception desk at the entrance area, right where the words say New Infill, providing security during the week. This entry lobby is at the same level as the parish house. Just below it, the words New Infill, you can see the square rectangle, which indicates the elevator. The elevator has doors on both sides. You can enter it from the parish house levels, that is to say the basement, the first floor, and the upper floor, through one door. And the opposite door, you can enter from the levels of Lloyd Hall, both the main level and the lower Lloyd Hall level. In this situation, if you're going from the parish house to Lloyd Hall, you would enter one side and exit the other. You can also see, both in the blue and in the beige area, a set of bathrooms, women's and men's bathrooms on the Lloyd Hall level. The ground floor of the parish hall will be modified to provide program areas since the offices will be moved upstairs. The meeting room that we now use will be expanded. Wynn's office will become a nursery. There will be 2 new bathrooms associated with that nursery. And the current meeting room will become a parlor. The vestry and sacristy areas will also be improved. The second floor, reached by the elevator, will have a choir room with clean and fresh air. Church offices will also be located on the second floor, as well as a combination of small individual offices and large meeting areas. On weekends, the Children's Christian Formation Program will be on the ground floor in Lloyd Hall with a partition, so that depending on the size of the program, one half might be used for receptions or other meetings. Special storage units will hold all of the materials for the students and can be put into the niches that you can see in the plan, so that during the week, the preschool will be able to operate here from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. In this location, it will be separated from the other activity of the building, which can continue to function. The lower level of Lloyd Hall will be renovated with additional bathrooms and a small kitchenette. The lunch program and other meeting activities will continue to take place. The lunch program will continue to use the kitchen. Food will be transported either by elevator or lift. In this aerial view from the digital model that the architects created, we can see the existing conditions of a view from the corner of Bossavan and Stockley Gardens. You can see the current stairs going up to the parish house, the blue awnings to mark the entrance, and you can see the little breezeway connection to the church and parish house. In the second aerial view, which illustrates the proposed changes to be made to the parish complex, you can see the entry drive, you can see the ramps leading up to an entry porch, And you can see the infill building between Lloyd Hall and the parish house. Between the entry drive and Stockley Gardens is the location of the playground. This closer view is an eye-level one that shows the design of the entry porch. It is residential in scale and we hope welcoming. The porch can be used by persons waiting to be picked up. The accessibility ramp is in two parts. The second part will be covered by a canopy. In this view, which is what we will see as we approach the steps, you can see the detail on the porch. It resembles the Lychgate garden entry, and it also is similar to many of the porches that you see on houses in Ghent. The area to the right at the top of the stairs is the reception area. Above, you can see the elevator lobby and reception area on the second floor. When you enter the building through double doors from the porch, you will see the reception desk. Behind it is the stained glass window that is currently located in the vestry room, which came from Old St. Luke's Church. Experts have told us that it is the most valuable one we have. In this view, taken from behind the reception desk, we are looking back to the entry doors on the left and up to the steps that lead to the passage along Lloyd Hall, which will have new, large, and expanded windows. The interior of Lloyd Hall will be renovated and modified. This will include a movable partition. In this view, we see the space with the partition closed, creating two spaces, and we're in one of them. Here it is being used as a classroom, either for the preschool or for Christian formation. You can see the cabinets in the background, which store the equipment and the work of the students. Movable wall will be designed to be able to be used as a wall board that people can pin things up on, and will provide a good deal of flexible space. This second view is from exactly the same point, showing the space when the partition is open. And as you can see, it has a large capacity for an audience with a speaker or a performance. It can also be used for large receptions. The construction strategy for this project involves reorganizing what we architects sometimes refer to as the bones of the complex. That is, the most fundamental parts of the building: the structure, the circulation, the mechanical equipment, things like bathrooms, elevators, and stairs, which are permanent fixtures of the building. In order to get a building to work properly, we need to get the bones right. Right now, they're not. To be able to do this scale of construction requires a large-scale operation that must be done all at one time. The construction of an elevator and providing new mechanical and electrical systems cannot be done piecemeal and incrementally. Later improvements, such as adding bookcases or creating ornament or additional furniture, can easily be done incrementally over time. The cost of all of this work will be approximately $7.2 million. In order to fund that project, we have carefully crafted a financial strategy which is illustrated in the pie chart. You can see the importance of the grant for the preschool. It represents 42% of the total cost from our major donor. We will continue to use income from endowments, which will be about 3% of the cost. We are going to apply for tax credits, and our advisors inform us that we can expect about 14% of the cost to be covered by those tax credits. We were fortunate to receive a matching grant challenge, which provided an additional 4%. We are in the process of securing additional grants for an additional 3%. We have remaining from the pledge campaign about $1 million in funding, which represents about 14% of that, indicated in the dark yellow. That leaves a relatively small amount of money that's yet to be raised, approximately 20%. And we are embarking on a campaign which will be for a total of an additional $1 million. The Fund for the Future campaign began in a quiet, low-key way in late fall. We decided to wait until the end of the annual pledge campaign and until collaborations with the Williams School and funding were confirmed to proceed with the rest of the campaign. However, in the short time of that campaign, 45 people made pledges of nearly $600,000. Our goal then is another $1 million, which will trigger the final third of the grant from Jane Batten. We need to achieve that by the fall of 2020 in order to make our cash flow work. We thank all those who have already given, and we thank everyone in advance for your support of this final $1 million. Without that support, we would once again fail, and it would be another generation before the improvements could be made. In view of national demographics, and specifically the demographics within our church, it's clear that ours is the last generation that will have the resources that will be able to do this. We cannot fail.